Tokyo was not a forgiving city in October of 1964. The games had ended 4 days earlier. The flag still hung from the lampposts along the Sotabori Dori, and the scaffolding had not yet come down from the facades of the newer buildings that had been finished in the weeks before the opening ceremony. The city smelled of fresh paint and cold rain and the particular satisfaction of a nation that had told the world it was ready, and had been proven right. 60,000 people had packed the Budokan Arena on the first day of the judo competition alone, and when the Japanese champion had won the open weight division, the sound that came from that crowd had not resembled applause. It had resembled something closer to weather. The man who would destroy the evening's demonstration had not yet arrived. His name was Koji Sato, and in October of 1964 he was 24 years old, 6 feet and 1 inch tall, and weighed 219 pounds without an ounce of it wasted. He had won the All-Japan Judo Championship not once but 3 consecutive years, a feat that had appeared, by every informed analysis, structurally impossible for a man his age. His grip strength had been measured in a Tokyo sports laboratory at 91 kilograms of force per hand. His throwing record across international competition stood at 206 successful executions and 0 reversals. No one, in the 4 years he had competed at the highest level, had escaped a grip he chose to apply. The coach of the Soviet national team had described his seoi nage, the shoulder throw, as the single most complete throwing technique active in world competition. He was, by the consensus of every observer with credentials enough to have an opinion, the finest pure judoka alive. His flaw was not technique. His flaw was that he understood this about himself, and could not fully set the knowledge down. The event on the evening of October the 8th was a closed reception hosted by the Japanese Judo Federation for invited guests, a portion of the foreign athletic delegations, and a selection of martial artists from 17 nations who had traveled to Tokyo for the games. The venue was a private training hall on the grounds of the Kodokan, the spiritual home of judo worldwide, a floor of pale cypress wood 140 feet long, lit by banks of overhead fluorescence that cast everything in a flat, honest light that left no shadows in which to be ambiguous. There were perhaps 300 people present. A low wooden dais at the north end of the hall had been arranged for brief demonstrations. The reception was formal. The sake had been flowing since 7 o'clock. Koji Sato had come in the expectation of being seen, which is different from coming in the expectation of being watched. He had already given 2 autographs by the time the evening shifted. In the next 40 seconds, in front of 300 of the most credentialed martial artists on earth, the direction of his understanding of what he knew would change permanently. Nobody in that hall knew they were about to witness something that would be whispered about in dojos from Osaka to Oakland for the next 6 decades. Sato did not find the stranger. The stranger had been there before him, which was itself an administrative curiosity that no one at the Federation had thought to investigate. He was seated on a folding wooden chair in the 4th row from the dais, not in the front row as a guest of his standing might have been expected to arrange, but back, slightly to the left, in a position that offered an unobstructed view of the entire room without placing himself at the center of it. He was wearing a plain dark jacket over a white shirt, the jacket unremarkable, the kind of garment a man might pack for a trip without particular thought. His build was not large. His hands were folded in his lap. He was watching the room the way a man watches a fire, with interest, without urgency. He was 23 years old. He had been studying Wing Chun since the age of 13, under the instruction of Ip Man in Hong Kong, an apprenticeship that had lasted until he was 18 and that Ip Man had declined to formally terminate on the grounds that there was nothing formal left to terminate. The student had absorbed everything the teacher possessed and had begun in the final year to develop responses to situations the curriculum had not anticipated. He had been fighting in real terms since he was a child on the streets of Kowloon. Not sport fighting, not point fighting, not the restrained and refereed contact of tournaments, but the specific and irreversible contact of situations that could not be paused. He had come to Tokyo as part of a small American delegation, attached loosely to the film industry's presence at the Games. He was not on any competition roster. His name appeared on no program. His name was Bruce Lee. He had not been introduced to Koji Sato. He had not been introduced to anyone. He was watching and waiting and drinking green tea, and the room did not know what it contained. The demonstration began at 8:30. A Federation official gave brief remarks in Japanese which were translated into English with a 4-second delay, and then 3 of Sato's junior students performed a kata sequence on the dais that was technically clean and received polite applause. Then Sato himself moved to the center of the floor, not to the dais, but to the main floor, and the slight shift in the room's attention was immediate and involuntary, the way a conversation in a loud restaurant will pause when someone of genuine consequence enters. He spoke through a translator. He said that he wished to offer a demonstration of kuzushi, the breaking of balance, the foundational principle upon which all throwing technique in judo was constructed. He said that he required a partner from the floor, preferably someone with a martial arts background, preferably someone who believed himself difficult to move. The request was phrased courteously. The smile that accompanied it was not discouraging. But there was in the framing of the invitation a particular kind of confidence that is indistinguishable from condescension until the moment has passed, and then it becomes perfectly distinguishable. A judo black belt from the West German delegation stepped forward. He was broad-shouldered and evidently strong and had the careful posture of a man who knows how to fall. Sato took his lapel grip with his right hand and his sleeve grip with his left, applied 4 pounds of lateral pressure for a duration of approximately 1 second, and the German was in the air, and then he was on the floor, and the entire sequence had taken less time than it takes to read this sentence. The room made a sound. The German stood, bowed, and returned to his seat with the expression of a man who had learned something he had not expected to need to learn. Sato released the grip. He turned to the room. He said, "There is a difference between a man who has trained to resist force and a man who has never felt real force. Any man here," he said, "can be moved if the force is applied at the right angle. Before the body knows to resist." He said, "Any man." He was looking, as he said it, at no one in particular. But the words moved through the room the way a current moves through still water, reaching every person present before settling. In the 4th row, Bruce Lee set his tea down. He stood. He did not stand the way a man stands when he is challenging something. He stood the way a man stands when he is simply no longer seated. It was not theatrical. It was a motion, and then it was complete. He did not fold his jacket. He did not remove his jacket. He walked from the 4th row to the edge of the open floor, and he stopped at a distance of 11 feet from Koji Sato, which was, though no one in the room would have known to notice it at the time, a very precisely chosen distance. Not close enough to suggest aggression. Not far enough to suggest hesitation. Exactly far enough to make the man who intended to close it do the work of closing it. He said he would like to try. His English had an accent that the room could not immediately place. His posture was relaxed in a way that read to an untrained observer as casual. It was not casual. It was the specific relaxation of a man whose body is on a different kind of alert than the bodies of the people watching him. Sato looked at him. He took in the jacket, the build, the shoes. He took in the distance of 11 feet, which he did not read as tactical. He took in the absence of any competitive credential or introduction or affiliation. He nodded. He said something in Japanese that the translator rendered as, "Come then, he has already lost. He just does not know it yet." If you want to find out what happened in the next 40 seconds, make sure you are subscribed and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from tonight. This channel covers the stories they do not tell in the documentaries, and you will not want to miss what comes next. The floor between them was 14 boards of pale cypress, each one worn smooth at the center by decades of feet and falls. Sato moved first, not with aggression but with the deliberate, economical forward motion of a man who has closed distance 10,000 times and knows exactly what the end of that motion produces. He was not rushing. He did not need to rush. He reached at 7 feet. His right hand moved for the lapel. It did not arrive. The lapel was not where it had been. This was the first second. It is necessary to pause here and understand what had just occurred, because it did not look like anything. It looked like a small adjustment. It looked, to the 300 people watching, like a step to the side. Maybe 2 inches, maybe 3, taken at a moment slightly before the logical moment to take it. What it was, in the language that Bruce Lee had spent 10 years learning to speak without speaking, was a statement about distance. A fight is not two bodies making contact. A fight is a negotiation, conducted at speed, about who controls the space between them. Koji Sato controlled space by entering it before his opponent had processed the entry. What he had just encountered, for the first time in 206 throwing attempts, was an opponent who did not give him the entry. Not by retreating, not by tensing and resisting, but by not being in the expected position at the expected moment. The geometry had been denied at its premise. The throw could not be assembled because the first piece had not been handed over. Sato recalibrated. This took him approximately half a second and represented a speed of recalibration that was, by any standard, extraordinary. It was not fast enough. His left hand moved for the sleeve. Second 2. The sleeve moved, not backward. Sideways and fractionally forward, which was not the direction any resisting opponent moves, and which took Sato's left arm across a trajectory it had not been extended to travel. His balance shifted 4 inches to the right. He corrected. The correction took a quarter of a second. In the third row, a member of the All Japan coaching staff had both hands flat on his knees. He had not moved them. He was watching with an expression that might, in a lesser man, have become alarm, but that in him remained simply attention, elevated past its usual resting point. Near the north wall, a French fencing coach who had been speaking to a translator stopped speaking. The translator waited. The fencing coach did not resume. On the dais, one of Sato's junior students had turned to say something to the student beside him and had not finished the sentence. The room was not silent yet. It would be silent in 11 seconds, but it had stopped generating new sound, which is a different and more absolute thing. Second 3. Sato stepped inside. This was his preferred solution to an opponent who would not give him the outside. He changed the geometry entirely, compressing the distance to 0, attempting the inner body position from which the hip throw becomes available. He was very fast. He was faster than the West German had been by a margin that was not close. He moved into the space that existed between them and applied his body to the problem with a precision and a commitment that represented, without exaggeration, the best technique available on Earth in October of 1964. He found no resistance. He also found no body. The body had moved. It had moved not back and not sideways, but at a 40-degree angle forward and to the right, which meant that Sato's entry, instead of meeting a mass to throw, met only air, and his own momentum continued through the space where the mass had been, and his front foot landed 2 inches further forward than it had intended to land, and his center of gravity was now, for a duration of approximately 4/10 of a second, ahead of his base. 4/10 of a second is nothing. 4/10 of a second is the duration of a blink. In the vocabulary of what Bruce Lee had been trained to recognize and respond to, 4/10 of a second was the length of a career. He did not throw. He did not sweep. He placed his left hand on the back of Sato's right shoulder, not with force, with intention, with the application of approximately 11 pounds of directional pressure along the exact vector of the momentum Sato had already committed. It was the difference between pushing a door and allowing a door to complete its swing. Koji Sato hit the floor. He did not fall. He did not stumble. He went to the floor with the complete and involuntary commitment of a man whose body has been directed to a destination it had not selected. It was clean. It was total. It happened so quickly that the sound his body made reaching the cypress wood arrived in the ears of the 300 people present before several of them had registered that something had begun. The room did not applaud. The room went silent with the particular quality of silence that is not the absence of sound but the presence of a revised understanding. It moved across the hall the way a change in air pressure moves across a room, reaching the front first and then spreading backward through the rows until it arrived at the far wall and had nowhere left to go. 300 of the finest martial artists alive, from 17 nations in the home of judo, said nothing. Sato was on the floor. He was on his back. He had not been injured. He understood, with the comprehensive and instantaneous comprehension of a man who has spent his entire life learning to read the physics of bodies in space, exactly what had just happened. He understood the geometry. He understood the vector. He understood the distance principle that had been applied to him so cleanly that he had supplied every pound of force himself. He understood that the man standing above him had not tried to throw him. He had simply arranged the conditions under which Sato threw himself. He lay there for 2 seconds. This was not disorientation. This was thought. Bruce Lee extended his right hand. He extended it with the palm upward, which is not the posture of a man offering help to someone who has fallen. It is the posture of a man offering an acknowledgement. The distinction was not lost on anyone in the room with enough experience to read it. He said, "Please." One word. Quiet, no volume behind it, none required. Sato looked at the hand. He looked at the face above it. He took the hand and came to his feet, and they stood at a distance of 8 inches from each other, and the room did not breathe. And then Sato said something that was not translated immediately. The translator, a young man near the dais, found the words after a pause of perhaps 3 seconds, which in that silence was its own kind of duration. He said that Sato had said, "I did not know what I was reaching for." He said it quietly. He said it to Bruce Lee and not to the room, which meant the room heard it anyway, because rooms hear things said at that volume in that silence better than they hear announcements. It was not an apology and it was not an excuse, it was something rarer, an accurate description. A man of Koji Sato's accomplishment does not arrive at false modesty. He arrives at observation. He had reached for a grip, with every tool his body contained and every refinement his 10,000 hours had produced, and what he had reached for had not been available in the form he had expected. He was not diminished by this. He was informed by it, which is a different thing, and a harder thing to accept and a more valuable thing to carry. He did not look at the floor. He looked at Bruce Lee. The fork was there, as it always is in such moments, visible to everyone present and navigable only by the man standing at its base. He could have chosen the narrower path, the path that begins with a qualifier, with a footnote. With the words that translate approximately into the circumstances were unusual, or the footing was imperfect. It would not have been a dishonest path. The footing had been unusual. The circumstances had been unprecedented. There were qualified versions of what had happened that were technically defensible. He did not take that path. He bowed, not the shallow social bow of the reception line. The full bow, the 30-degree bow, the one that in the vocabulary of the Kodokan carries the specific weight of genuine regard. He held it. He came up. He said one additional sentence. The translator said, "He says he is grateful to have been shown what he did not know was missing." Bruce Lee returned the bow to the same depth and held it for the same duration. Then he walked back to the 4th row. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He sat down. He retrieved his tea, which had gone cold. He drank it. A French fencing coach resumed his conversation with a translator. Neither of them referred to what they had just seen because there did not exist, in either language they shared, a sentence adequate to begin. Near the north wall, a member of the All-Japan coaching staff unclenched his hands from his knees. He would describe the 40 seconds he had just witnessed 14 times over the following 30 years, and the description would be accurate each time, and it would still be insufficient each time, and he would say so at the end of every telling. A junior student on the dais finally finished the sentence he had started before the 3rd second. No one remembered what it was. The story left the Kodokan that evening in the bodies of 300 people, and it traveled the way stories of that kind travel, slowly at first, carried in the specific vocabulary of people who understood what they had seen, and then faster. Passed between dojos and training halls and competition floors across a decade, and then further, moving into the broader language of people who had not been present and could not verify and did not need to. Because the story had by then the particular texture of things that are true regardless of whether every detail survives the journey intact. The German black belt who had demonstrated Kazushi at the start of the evening would go on to become a respected coach in Hamburg, and he would tell his students for the rest of his career that the most important thing he had seen in martial arts was something he had witnessed as a spectator in Tokyo in 1964, and that it had nothing to do with force. Koji Sato would continue competing for 4 more years. His record across that period was one of the finest in the history of the sport. He would retire undefeated in formal competition. In a 1974 interview with a Japanese sports journal, he was asked about the most significant technical challenge he had ever encountered. He gave an answer that the journalist did not initially understand, and that became, in the years after Bruce Lee's death in 1973, frequently reprinted. He said that he had once reached for something at full commitment, with everything he had, and the thing had not been there. He said that the absence of it had been more instructive than any technique he had ever been taught. He said that he had spent the years since trying to make himself as difficult to locate as the young man in the dark jacket. He did not name the young man. In the context of 1974, he did not need to. Bruce Lee was on a flight back to the United States within 48 hours of the Kodokan reception. He did not discuss the evening publicly. He did not discuss most evenings publicly. What he did in the years that followed was build a system of movement that took the distance principle he had applied on that cypress floor and extended it into every corner of what he was developing under the name Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. Not a style, not a system in the conventional sense, a philosophy of approach. Be where the attack is not. Be where the response has not yet been formed. The fight begins before the hands move. The 300 witnesses scattered across 17 nations over the years that followed. Some of them would become famous in their own right. Some of them would teach. Some of them would die having never found language for what they had seen that satisfied them, and would leave it to their students as an unresolved inheritance, a thing that had happened in a room they had been present in, that still did not entirely make sense, that still mattered. A story is not diminished by being carried imperfectly. It is not diminished by the years, or the distance, or the versions that accumulate. It is changed by those things, the way everything real is changed by time, and what remains when the change has finished working on it is the irreducible part. The part that is true at the bone. What is true at the bone is this. A man who had never lost reached for something with the full authority of his life's work, and was shown in 40 seconds. That authority and reach are different instruments, and that the most consequential thing a craftsman can encounter is the edge of what his craft has mapped. The hall was cleaned and reset that evening by Kodokan's staff who had not witnessed the demonstration and would not learn of it for several days. The cypress floor was swept, the chairs were stacked, the sake cups were collected. The overhead lights were switched off in sequence from north to south, and the last light in the hall fell on the small indentation in the wood where Koji Sato's body had arrived. And then it went out too. Next time, we go to a film lot in Burbank, California in the summer of 1971, where a visiting Soviet wrestling champion told a room full of stuntmen that the action on American screens was theater, not combat, and then asked the man sitting in the director's chair to prove otherwise. That man was Bruce Lee. The stuntmen who were present have never agreed on exactly how long it lasted. They agree on everything else.